Hey everyone, so I have Peyton here with me today. So Peyton, tell us who you are and what you do for work.
Yeah, my name is Peyton Heckerman. I'm one of the owners of Heckerman and Holler Group and also Primitive Star Quilt Shop. Heckerman and Holler Group is a 3PL based in northern Indiana that does fulfillment and logistics for e-commerce brands. And then we also own Primitive Star Quilt Shop, which is an e-commerce brand that's specialized in primitive home decor.
So for the audience, we actually had an interview with the previous owner, Jackie, before. Peyton here has since acquired Primitive Star Quilt. So Peyton, you want to tell us the story on how you kind of came across Primitive Star Quilt?
Yeah, so funny enough, our office used to be in downtown Argus, Indiana, which is where the shop was, Primitive Star Quilt Shop. Jackie, the previous owner of the quilt shop, literally just came in on my office one day, and she's had her business card and said that she was looking to sell her business, and if I knew anybody to give her a shout. And she was also actually my high school math teacher's wife, and
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
we kind of knew each other a little bit. And after thinking about it for a little bit, I was like, oh, I'll walk back down and kind of get the scoop from her. And so she gave me the grand tour. And several months later, we ended up, making it happen. And we officially closed and did the transition in September of 2025.
Yeah, that's an awesome story. So for the people that are watching, we have a lot of e-commerce brands, e-commerce founders that, watch our stuff. So, I mean, what's like something that surprised you during like the acquisition process?
Our challenges were mostly with banking, with
Mm.
e-commerce. They're hesitant to underwrite with e-commerce and that kind of thing, but also just learning the business of e-commerce. And from Jackie, I see a lot of emphasis online on meta ads and Google and things like that. And she always really told us, she's like, you own your email list.
Hmm.
And when you're going through an acquisition, you're getting introduced to several different vendors from the previous owner. They're telling you everybody's the best thing since sliced bread. You don't know who's what. But the one thing she really did emphasize heavily to us was the email list and the importance of it, and the partnership with Dahas. She was really adamant that we needed to continue that. So that was really surprising. I guess I didn't really consider email to be as prevalent as it actually is for us.
Hmm. And then you started off with like a logistics business. So how did running a logistics business versus like an e-commerce business kind of was different from your day to day?
Well, it's way less stressful. I can tell you that. I like the e-commerce more. There's a lot more flexibility. I like tangible products that we're moving and interacting with the customers. Logistics, there's a lot of moving parts, especially with the truckload side of our business, where we're working with carriers all throughout the U.S. and Canada. I like the 3PL logistics side of it here that's based in our warehouse, which is in Rochester,
Hmm.
Indiana. And like I said, the main thing I just like, mostly with that is, when you're working with your hands and actually seeing products. I would much rather manage something 12 hours a day than do sales. So I
Hmm.
really do prefer that.
That's awesome. And then where do you see Print Star Quilt in, let's say, like the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, I'd really like to see us continue to beef up our customer base. We've diversified our products a little bit since our takeover. We've added in, wood primitives, but also one of the things that stood out in the process as we were looking to acquire the quilt shop is that year over year, we've been seeing steady growth and continued
Hmm.
growth. I know a lot of e-commerce brands, and we're currently looking to purchase another one as well. And some that I'm
Oh.
evaluating, they have maybe 3 months a year that they're profitable, and
Hmm.
those 3 months are like make or break. The difference with Primitive Star is that consistently throughout the year, we have a very strong, steady, loyal customer base, and the same people ordering. We have a really strong repeat customer ratio, almost 56%, which I
Hmm.
know standard e-commerce is about 20 to 30%. So
Hmm.
we have a really strong base there. So continuing to see that grow and continuing to boost what we already have going, and continue to offer the same great customer service that the people that have been so loyally shopping with us and Jackie since 2014. Actually, she started off sooner than that and
Hmm.
have been
Awesome. What has business results been like since the acquisition?
strong.
And yeah, is there any like wins or milestones you guys achieved?
The main thing, every month is a milestone. To be honest with
Hmm.
you, we've had every single month, of owning the quilt shop supersedes sales from what that month was previous year. We just finished out a really, really strong March that was over, I think, 26% above what the previous year was. And then on average, I'd say month to month, year over year, we're about that, 15 to 18% growth. And that's just what we want to continue to see. Like I said, every month's a record with how many orders are being placed, how many orders we're shipping out. And we're really looking to go full throttle on this. And we're willing to put the work in, if the customer base is there.
And then we've been working with you and Jackie for like probably 2 years right now. Like, what's like one piece of advice you have for other clients to get the most out of our services?
Yeah, so the main thing I do want to put out, and why I was really willing to do the interview, and I said this during the call with Aaron and Dana yesterday, who are account reps. We are not. I see every day, especially now that we're looking at how to grow the business. I get so many ads on my phone from different media agencies and things like that claim they can do anything and everything. We will deliver you a million a month or something like that in sales, or just crazy outlandish grabs. And like I said, we obviously inherited the relationship, but really all that to say is, I see so many of the ads and so many of the like testimonials. I would really encourage any of your people watching this to reach out to us directly. And, we had actually one of your potential clients reach out as well for a reference. And we're very much so happy to give that. I tell Aaron and Dana, there's a lot of moving parts to, what we have. We have a very strong email list, over, I think, 60,000 active subscribers, something like that. I can't remember the exact numbers offhand, but, consistent growth. So, and a really strong open rate as well. So it's really important for all of our emails to be designed well and really have our voice. And I think that the team has been doing a fantastic job at learning that voice and also learning our workflow. I know that depending on what's going on with my day, because I personally go through all the email campaigns, it might be day of that I'm making adjustments to the campaign, which I'm sure obviously, you want to minimize that as much as possible. But I'll say, like, your team has never once complained or, been, had any kind of attitude about it. They always just do it and get it done. That sort of thing, because we deal with a lot of people.
Yeah.
It is huge. I noticed that big time. And, it's not uncommon for me to, be looking at the email and then decide to rework the entire thing that's supposed to go out that afternoon. And like I said, they get right to work. They're very quick and responsive. And we work with other media agencies as well for other things. And I just don't see the same responsiveness that we see from the DAHAS team. I hear regularly from another group, well, our creative team needs to work on this, or we need some lead time. The DAHAS team is really willing to, this is impossible. They're like, well, it's not great, but we'll get it done right now. You know what I mean? So that's really the main thing that sticks out to me, is like how the team's attitude is and their willingness to just like get stuff done.
Thank you, Peyton. Really appreciate that. And then what is something you would say to someone that's considering working with us?
Main thing I would say to somebody who's considering working with DAHAS is there's so many people out there marketing the same services, same email campaigns, and Facebook Meta. And I know we only use you guys for email right now, but I would tell anybody that DAHAS is the real deal. I don't know what your fee structure is across the board. I know what we pay, and I know that I think it's worth it. Just because, like I said, there's so many last minute changes, so many moving parts, and just market insights as well. I think the team's really knowledgeable there. We had a discussion yesterday with Dana, and I was telling her about some idea that I had, and she gave me some insights from another client and how that went with them. So I would tell anybody seriously, and I'm not one to recommend anybody for anything ever. So it's a compliment if I'm getting on a call to do it.
Yeah, same here.
I would really strongly advise somebody with an e-commerce brand to get in touch.
That's awesome, Peyton. Thank you so much. And then for you, with you running a logistics business, how did that help kind of like you transition into, running an e-commerce brand? What were some of the strengths you took from your logistics business over to an e-commerce business? Since, e-commerce business, the front end is always like marketing, things like that. But what really breaks down in a lot of e-commerce brands is logistics, getting products, things like that. So what kind of strengths you took from your logistics business over to Primitive Star Quilt?
Fast pace is going to be a big one, and customer service, timely responses. Our customer service is right there, and because in logistics, you're expected to reply to emails in 2 minutes, not 2 hours. And, that's not to say that some, might slip through the cracks here and there. You're going to have that at a large volume, but we get back with everyone in, pretty much under 16 hours is the kind of benchmark. Shipping, we're familiar with the parcel carriers and understanding what sort of costs go into that and working terms to our favor. And then, of course, on the inbound side, what space constraints we have. When we purchased the business from Jackie, she was operating out of a small 1,500 square foot building. We moved it to our 65,000 square foot warehouse that has plenty of space we were able to reconfigure the whole setup. That's, really, it cut down on our labor hours too, because people were able to lay the setup out more efficiently and move better throughout the space. Those are really the main things, is just, overall, industry know-how on some different things. And with logistics, the main name of the game is efficiency and cost savings. And, with e-commerce, there's a lot of costs. And so if you're, knowledgeable on how to make terms work for you and drive efficiency, I think that's where the opportunity lies.
Yeah, just thinking about that on top of my head, I'd love to get you on maybe a YouTube video in the future. We can talk about e-commerce logistics as well. Would that be something you'll be interested in?
Yeah, I mean, anything we can do to beef up our footprint and being able to help, in the 3PL space, I'm very much interested in. We're located in central, northern Indiana. We're within an hour and a half, hour 45 minutes of the three major shipping hubs, which are, Indianapolis, Fort Wayne, and Chicago. So we can get packages pretty much anywhere within about a day, 2 days.
That's awesome. I know you mentioned you were looking to acquire another e-commerce brand pretty shortly here, right?
Yeah, I definitely have my eye out. So if you know anybody, let me know.
Yeah, I'll try my best to keep my eye out. But how is it like running multiple businesses? How do you kind of manage that? And what's your typical week like for you?
Typical week, you never know what's going to happen. There's really not a typical week. But, I like it. I like the fast pace. Like I said, if I'm really not a salesperson, to be honest with you, that's not really my forte and really isn't for my business partner either. But, both of us don't mind working 12-hour days if necessary. And, I like to move things around and have creative solutions to things. So, it's just kind of, I have not had a normal day in 6 years, compared to somebody else. So I don't know. This is just my normal life, I guess.
Yeah, I was reading some social media posts. I think you started business when you were 16, am I right?
That's correct. Yeah. So we started our logistics company when I was actually still in high school. The reason we did, freight brokerage and that model was because the cost of entry was so hard. But, what happens when you have a cost of entry being so low, that means that every Joe Blow thinks they can do it. Same with digital marketing, cost of entry to that and starting an agency is so low. And that's what I was, saying as well, is I see all these ads all the time. Everybody's has a digital marketing agency, but again, it's who's actually legit, who's paying for their testimonials, who's legit, who's real. And like I said with Jackie, it kind of helped for us, when we had the acquisition to have the inherited relationship. But yeah, it's just, we like to stay active, keep adding legs underneath the table to what we do and finding new opportunities all the time.
And how did you even stumbled across logistics? Because I know when I was 16, I was doing FBA, drop shipping, things like that. And that was very easy to get into. How did you stumble across logistics? I feel that's not really a common business to get into at such a young age.
No, it's not. We had actually, I had worked for a startup wire manufacturing company, and how I got there was my first job ever was for the local telecommunications company called RTC. And I got that job. I was filming high school basketball games for them. They owned the TV provider down in Rochester, Indiana, and they wanted to cast, the local sports games on for their cable clients. And, we've been talking about maybe getting into some business spotlights for some of their internet customers as well. And I thought, I passed this building in Argus every day on my way home, this shell building. It was under construction. Why don't I see what they have going on? And as it turns out, it was an electrical wire manufacturer called Sequel Wire and Cable. And I had, to make a long story short, ended up finding an opportunity, and one of the owners had asked me if I was interested in working there. And so I was there for probably a year and 7 months, almost 2 years, doing a variety of different projects in finance and business development, and learned a lot from the owners there. I still keep in touch with them today, and we occasionally do truckloads for them. But we had started getting a lot of freight damage with a less than truckload. And so I had started investigating, what we could do. And, then I think it was more of a joke. I don't think they were serious, but I took it quite literally. They were like, well, you should start a logistics company then. And I was like, maybe I will. And, so I did. We started that when I was still working there. Then the RV market, like the campers, they were supplying a lot of wire to that market. And it kind of took a little bit of a dip. And so I was no longer working there, but I had this business, and I was like, I guess we're just going to go full chips in on this. And like I said, it's a very competitive game. It's a price game, and trying to get in the door with manufacturers is very hard. Actually, just before this call, I stopped over at a place that's close to us, and I think something might happen there just because I bumped into a couple of the right people at the right time. But I mean, that's really the game of logistics. It is all right place, right time. So that's how I got into that.
That's awesome. And then any plans for the logistics business in the next, 3 to 5 years?
The main thing I want to focus on is developing the 3PL and warehousing side, and really scale back the freight brokerage. Not necessarily scale back, I wouldn't say, but not focus on it as much, because it is kind of a dialing for dollars game. And we have a beautiful facility here in Rochester, Indiana. Like I said, very, very well located. So focusing on developing that end of the business and supporting other e-commerce brands and shipping out of here, that's really what I'd like to be doing.
Awesome. Well, Peyton, is there any last words you want to leave the audience before we pretty much end this podcast?
No. Like I said, I know I don't know who did it exactly, but somebody had given somebody that was looking at DAHAS my email. I saw it last week, or maybe it's the week before, and subject line was just DAHAS reference. And they had a bunch of questions that were similar and, pretty good, well thought out questions. But, like I said, I was very happy to give the review because, you see so many of them. And I know as an e-commerce brand, and, especially those that are starting out that don't have, an excess of funds, you want to be really strategic about where you're spending your money. And I'd be, like I said, just thrilled to be able to give the reference and speak more on our experience with, the DAHAS team.
So now we can just send you this video instead.
Right, exactly.
Awesome, Peyton. Yeah, it's a pleasure talking today.
It was nice talking to you, Mark, as well. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, of course.